Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are still working on King Richard II, and today we get to hear from the Gardner in Act 3, Scene 4, because we need a little bit of a breather. Act 3, Scene 3 was kind of a big scene where King Richard falls from grace. Essentially, he literally comes down from Flint Castle after being confronted by Bolingbroke, who has said that he really just came back to get his lands and his titles back, and that's all he's asking for of Richard. But it's actually a much bigger deal than that, because for Richard to give him back his lands and his titles and all that sort of thing, and to undo his banishment, means he's going back on his word as king, which means he's going back on like what God has told him to do and all that sort of a thing. So he's doubting his position in the world and his position as king, and what does his reign mean if he can't even enforce this one banishment and all that sort of thing. So he has said that he will go where Bolingbroke leads. So they are on their way back to London. They were at Flint Castle. So now in Act 3, Scene 4, we're in the garden with the Queen and some of her serving ladies in waiting, whatever, and they're trying to cheer her up, and they're like, should we sing songs? Should we have a dance? Should we tell stories? And the Queen is just being very melancholy, because she was sad that Richard went off to fight a war in Ireland and left her and all that sort of thing. She's just been feeling bad, like there's this impending doom coming, even since the beginning of the play. So they're trying to cheer her up, and they are being very not successful in doing that. And then these two gardeners come in. It's often played as like an old gardener and a young gardener, like the master gardener and his apprentice sort of a thing. And the Queen is like, let's hide behind this bush and listen to what they have to say, because everybody's gossiping about what's going on in the kingdom. So if we listen to their gossip, then we'll know what's going on too. So the Queen and her ladies hide, and the gardeners come in, and the older gardener sets off on, you should tie up the apricots and you should do this. And the way that he's talking about the plant life in the garden is very metaphorical for what is politically going on in the kingdom at this time, to the point where he eventually just says, yeah, and Bolingbroke has killed Bushy Bagot and Green. And the younger gardener's like, wait a second, they're dead? And the older gardener says they are. And Bolingbroke hath seized the wasteful king. Oh, what pity is it that he had not so trimmed and dressed his land as we this garden at time of year, and wound the bark, the skin of our fruit trees, lest being overproud with sap and blood, with too much riches it confound itself. Had he done so, to great and growing men they might have lived to bear, and he to taste their fruits of duty. Superfluous branches we lop away, that bearing boughs may live. Had he done so, himself had borne the crown, which waste and idle hours hath quite thrown down. It's a very short speech, and basically he's just confirming that Bushy Bagot and Green have been killed, Bolingbroke has the king, and he's reiterating that what the king did was kind of stupid. He's saying that the gardener believes that Richard should have nourished his friends. He should have encouraged Bolingbroke and been there for him and supported him and all that sort of thing. And he should have gotten rid of the needless waste, being Bushy Bagot and Green. But since Richard was listening to Bushy Bagot and Green and banished Bolingbroke, things got all kinds of messed up. So the gardener's kind of the position that Richard did this to himself. So the Queen pops out from behind the bush. Before the Queen pops out from behind the bush, the younger gardener's like, wait a second, do you think he's going to be deposed? And the gardener's like, yeah, that's pretty much already in the works. And then the Queen pops out from behind the bush, and she's like, how do you know, you puny little gardener? How do you know that he's going to be deposed? And he's like, sorry, this is what everybody's saying. This is the state of the land and of the things. And she kind of curses the gardener, and then she leaves, and he's like, oh, she cried here, so we should plant some rue, because that's what we plant for weeping ladies, to remind us of weeping ladies as we plant rue. And that's the end of Act 3, Scene 4. And tomorrow we get into Act 4, Scene 1, where we're going to be for a little while, because there's a lot of really big monologues. But it's a beautiful scene, and if you ever get an opportunity to see this play and see this scene done, and see this scene done well, if you can find the version that David Tennant did with the Royal Shakespeare Company, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. You should check it out. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow as we start diving into that. Mwah.